Once there was a preacher by the name of Ted Haggard who stumbled from the path, or you might even say staggered. He was 1 in a million, or more aptly 1 in 10. Some folks say he put the men in amen. He preached the gospel message of intolerance and self-loathing, and traveled on his wayward way betraying his betrothing. He was the soul of piety and no one doubted him, until he hired a gigolo and used a pseudonym. So he humbly went to counseling, and then 3 weeks later he's born again, because Ted Haggard is completely heterosexual. Ted Haggard is completely heterosexual.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. It is Sunday, June 1st, 2008. That was Ted Haggard is completely heterosexual. And
I think that's when this comes into play a lot, that we do act a certain way, and we do care about other people, or we are motivated somehow to do things that are participating in taking care of each other. But why do we do it? Well, we don't just sit down and plan it out with a carefully 17-point plan of exactly why. It's
sure, but I think that's actually one of the benefits. I'm not saying that we don't understand. And one of the benefits of one of the benefits is that we can sit down and suss out what would be an appropriate ethical action in a given situation and why. Granted, it's going to be perhaps slightly different for different individuals, but that is something we can actually talk about and kind of come to some decision. You're talking about pulling over to help somebody on the side of the road. I've been in situations where I've done it. I'm sure, well, maybe not most people, but quite a few people have pulled over and helped someone on the side of the road. And I've also driven right past somebody who obviously needed assistance, even when I didn't have anything. I wasn't in a hurry to get somewhere.
Yeah, it's never this sort of consistent thing, or sometimes, or maybe with some people it is, but I think with most people, you'll tend to have a situation where, you'll just do it. A lot of it may have to do with the mood you're in. If you're having a good day,
right,
you may be more disposed to, spread the love a little bit. Whereas if you're just kind of feeling cranky, or you've had a rough day at work, or argued with your boss or your spouse or something, or you got to go to the bathroom real bad, or whatever it is that's giving you, just making you feel, you may be less inclined to do something.
Feeling antisocial at the moment.
Yeah.
But the way I see the benefit of being able to think about it is that if you take the time, which I think is kind of what Steve's suggesting as well, that we're so bad about knowing what our motivations are, that if you take the time to actually think about it and find out, even if you couldn't possibly discover what your current motivations are, you can understand yourself better, you can understand situations better, to where you can change your behavior to such a way that you follow a pattern that you're more comfortable with and you understand better. To where you can say, I could sit here right now and tell myself, anytime that I am not in a hurry to get somewhere, where I am not in a time-critical situation, and there's somebody on the side of the road who needs assistance, I should pull over and stop and help them. Why should I do that? Well, I think probably the best explanation comes from the promotion of memes. That if we had more, and it kind of ties into one of my ethical propositions, which is, if everybody did this, would the world be a better place or a worse place? And I think that if everybody offered assistance like this, the world would be a better place, and therefore I think it's probably
you can just look at the practical consequences of the act.
Yeah, I don't need some divine being to tell me that it's nice to pull over and help somebody who's got a flat tire, or may have had something happen. Even just offer them a cell phone.
And because I had the experience where I was on the receiving end of the help at one point in a situation where if I had not been, I really would have been in a world of hurt, because I was again driving out west. And so I'm on this stretch of I-10 between, Austin and El Paso, where there's nothing for hundreds of miles, nothing but desert and just scrub, and I blew a tire. So I finally just, realized, all right, I have no choice, so I just have to stand there on the side of the road. First guy, I could have been there for hours. I could have been there all day. I could have been there until dark. First dude that came by was some kid driving home from college, picked me up. Because I was on the receiving end of that, I'm more likely to, as the saying goes, pay it forward in future.
So what do you think we ought to do, Steve, given your proposition seems to be true? I think we've both demonstrated that we're not particularly keen on understand or knowledgeable about why we do the things we do.
No, and that, that's the point. And one of the things you'll run into, though, there's people that the way they talk, they are absolutely certain of absolutely why they do everything they do, and a lot of times the explanation is, I'm good because I believe this, right? And that, it's got nothing to do with their motivation. It's just the explanation that they have pat ready to go for anything good they do. They did it because it's a pre-made, ready explanation that is just right there at their fingertips, and it's not got anything to do with them doing the kinds of contemplation you're talking about doing, which is a good thing, to become familiar with why really do you really do things, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
it's a lot easier to say that,
right.
Jesus wants us to love each other and turn the other cheek and be nice to each other, and therefore that leads us to do things like pulling over the side of the road.
Yeah.
That's simpler.
The day I was in the mood to pull over on the side of the road, and I did it, that day was because Jesus wanted me to. That's why I did it. The day I didn't, well, I wouldn't,
Jesus didn't,
it doesn't exist, or, didn't happen. Or,
I think the bigger objection that I have, granted, it's a simpler answer. It's not necessarily true, and it's not necessarily a way to come to a better understanding of who you are, who we are, whatever. My biggest objection, I think, is that if I'm over on the side of the road with a flat tire, and somebody pulls over because they think Jesus wants them to, then it's likely they think Jesus wants them to stand there and preach at me while they help me in my situation. And if that's the case, keep driving.
Yeah.
I'd rather, and I'd say that, humorously, because I get lots of email from people that don't seem to understand that, I was a believer for, 20 some odd years and is, studying with the purpose of being a minister. So I've not only heard my fair share of sermons, I've composed a couple, and I've been in those situations. Help me with my tire.
Yeah.
And then if you want to, after you've helped me with the tire, invite me to your church, I have no objection to that.
Yeah.
It's just the same thing as if I invited you to the ACA happy hour. And I'll go to church. I've gone to church lots of times.
If you decide to help somebody change their tire, you have two reasons for doing it. Either you just want to help them change their tire so they can get on their way, just because you're a cool person, or you have some sort of ulterior motive, like, well, maybe I can get this person to come to my church. If there's an ulterior motive to why you're doing what you're doing, however good you may think it is, well, at that point, that's maybe
altruism's out the window then.
Yeah, that's maybe when you really ought to question how moral your decision-making process is. If it's not, if it's not done through altruism, but through some sort of ulterior motive.
Well, in between the two is when you feel good because you did something for somebody. That is something that feels good to you.
Yeah.
And then you can explain that feeling good a bunch of different ways. But that's a reason why people help each other out. Why they feel good is something that needs to be explained, but
and I think it's probably more than enough. Yeah, it's good enough reason for me to do things.
Yeah.
Not that I'm just the altruistic helper to the world. Yeah. But when I do something nice for somebody, it feels good.
Yeah, there is that sort of reward mechanism that just naturally gets kicked in, just knowing that you've done something for someone, and as a result they think you're a cool person, and so that's just all in terms of it's an esteem booster, and
who would want to go through life being miserable and hated? That's a concept I don't understand.
Yeah.
If it made you miserable to help people, then obviously nobody'd be doing it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Gosh, why did I help that guy with his tire?
Take care, y'all.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for the call. There was a preacher by the name of Ted Haggard who stumbled from the path, or you might even say staggered. He was 1 in a million, or more aptly 1 in 10. Some folks say he put the men in awe.